we're going to have a look at how to size the right size hammock for the right size tarp. I have 3 tarps by DD, all different sizes. I'll be going over some of the pros and cons between polyester tarps and nylon. 4 different lengths, 4 different tarps. I'm just going to put mine up on bungees. I've gone for 3 different colours, from the Coyote Brown, olive drab green and the multicam. This one here is the Sil-Nylon, and I also have 3 different hammocks as well. And I say different because the materials are different, not only the length is different. This is what they call parachute nylon. This one is a polyester hammock. We'll explain the difference between nylon and polyester in a minute. Up here are 2 of a more professional type of hammock setup. This is 1.1 ripstop nylon, so it's really fine in its weave. This one here is also fine in its weave. This is by Dutchware. It is the 1.6 Hexon hammock. So now we're going to have a look at the difference between Sil-Nylon and polyester. So what are the pros and cons between using a Sil-Nylon and a polyester? Let's start with this one. This one is Sil-Nylon. This is far lighter than using polyester. So a Sil-Nylon tarp will condense a lot more in your pack. You can get it relatively small if you're using a stuff sack. Mine is just rolled into snake skins, but it will condense a lot better, and it's a lot lighter as well. This is 4 meters by 3 meters. It weighs very, very little. So the polyester material is going to be noticeably heavier. Polyester is going to be at least half the price of something the same size as Sil-Nylon, at least 50% cheaper. The Sil-Nylon doesn't do great in the strong winds, but it can sag. It's more expensive, but I think they're the only downsides. You're going to notice the difference in weight using polyester is going to be at least twice as heavy, but it won't sag. Once you guy it out, it'll stay in the pitch you've given it. So they're the pros and cons first, and it'll be the same between using a polyester hammock and a nylon. The nylon hammock is going to be lighter and more compact, and something similar in its length. Polyester here, as you notice, is at least twice as big, but that is a lot stronger, has no sag. That'll give a little sag. So there you go. You need to first decide if you're going to spend a little extra and find out a little bit more about using Sil-Nylon, because they're bloody good tarps. They're pretty strong as well, given how thin they are, but to gain the strength for polyester, you've got to make them a lot thicker. So now we're going to have a look at 3 different sizes from DD with the tarp range. This one here is 3 meters by 3 meters. This one here by DD is 3.5 meters by 3.5 meters. And this one here is 4 meters by 4 meters. So there's a ½ meter between each of the 3 sizes, and that is important when we weigh up which hammock we're going to put with which tarp. These little hammocks here look pretty similar in their volume, packed up. This one is parachute nylon and is 2.8 meters long. This one is 11 foot. I'm going to try and get the smallest hammock up I have first. Now I'm just going to put mine up using its continuous loops here, and I'll put it on a Beckett hitch, so there's no hardware for this one. For this cheap parachute nylon, there's a bit of sagging, so although I had it higher up by the time I got in, it isn't where I put it. So that is why I go a little higher first. My toes are comfortably on the floor. My knees are bent in the seated position, about 90 degrees, and I need to find a tarp for it. This is a 2.8 long hammock, and I have a 3 meter tarp, so I should have 20 centimeters to spare, so 10 centimeters each end. Okay, it started to rain, so I'm going to get that up right now. This is the smallest one I have, in polyester anyway. I do have the 3 meters by 2.9, and that is also in Sil-Nylon. And that is also by DD, but it's very short, it won't cover this hammock. So if you are new to hammocking, got to keep this blue continuous loop bone dry. I might be able just to get away with it. Using a diamond configuration, I can get it from 3 meters to 4 meters, an extra meter, and that would be going from corner to corner, and I'll show you how the diamond configuration works on another video. That's why I had to go with something a little longer. 3.5 meters will definitely cover all of my hammocks, including this one here at 2.8, my 9.5 foot, my 11 foot, my 8 foot. 3.5 meters is going to be a good size guide. Marginally a little more money, so invest in 3.5 meters by 3.5 meters, and that will guarantee it will cover a multitude of hammocks, as where this one here doesn't quite do it on its own. So I'm going to pack this one up and put this one on with the same hammock in place. So I've got it into its quarters. I'm going to lay it down on the floor. So that is a look at the 3x3. Didn't quite cut it even for the smallest hammock I have. Now this has gone on my polyester hammock, but that was because I shortened the hammock by putting an SRL in, a structural ridgeline. Let's see if it can do a little better. I have a lot better pitch. Here you can see more of the continuous loop here and my knot is covered. Now remember, if I'm connecting a beginner between this continuous loop here and the tree webbing, that is going to increase as well to about this point here, and it has to be the same the other side. And indeed it is. It's covered very well, about 9.5 inches either side of coverage. So how would the very same tarp do, but on a bigger hammock? See, from little finger to thumb is completely covered here. It should be the same story with my polyester hammock as well, which is this one here. The benefits of polyester, both in your tarp and your hammock, is zero stretch. When I got into the hammock, it stayed exactly where I tied it off. There was no sag as I sat down. The tarp itself, similar kind of story. Once it's pitched out, you'll wake up with the same pitch, which is why I probably use my Sil-Nylon tarps mostly when there isn't strong winds or strong downpours, and especially winter. What about this very tarp and my longest hammock, 11 foot? Well, my 11 foot has an SRL, a structural ridge line, and that has the effect of shortening the hammock. But I don't always want that structural ridge line on my hammock. Sometimes I'd rather not have it, especially if I'm going to use something like a cocoon or a pod as my insulation. Therefore, I can't really have a structural ridge line on the hammock, and the ends of the hammock would stick out the ends of the tarp, and of course that would wick all the damp from the end all the way down, and I'd wake up with a wet hammock, wet back, wet feet. Not nice. So an 11 foot hammock with an SRL, and I've got drip rings on the end of mine here as a water break, and it's well covered, and it's same arrangement the other side. If I take my SRL off, the hammock would exceed the length, but I'm going to try just so we can see the other two tarps. But with only an inch or two to spare, the whole lot is sticking out, all the continuous loop, the drip ring, the knot. So down with the green one and up with something more suitable for this arrangement. This is in multicam, again it's DD. I should have plenty now to cover all this suspension. So no structural ridge line, and that would accommodate putting a cocoon over this rather than under quilts and top quilts. You could also use a tarp from Army Surplus. I haven't brought one out with me because there's a separate video on that. If I was to use an underquilt with this, then I would put my structural ridge line back on and I could forego the longer tarp. But as it is, I'm going to leave it like this just for today, and I'm going to bungee out the tarp. So that's the lee side of the tarp taken care of, pegged straight to the ground. One on each end, one in the middle, one in between the middle and the end. And I wouldn't say this multicam is overly camouflaged. You'd be much better off with the MTP basher for camouflage, but it wouldn't be long enough for an 11-foot hammock, that's all. So there's the lee side staked right to the ground. With the other side where there's less wind, I can just get 2 bungees, hook them together like that. When it comes to the stake, my stake here has a loop of cord here, and I go into the loop of the cord like that rather than actually onto the peg like that. And I've done it like that before. It's slipped off and this bungee has gone flying, you know, right into next door's garden. And at the time she had a young toddler and it scared the life out of me, because this could really hurt someone. So polyester for me, for winds and really heavy downpours, you pay in its weight in your pack. It's noticeable. So let's take this down now and go with a much lighter option for pretty much the same length. For that I would need Sil-Nylon. With this Sil-Nylon, it's a hell of a lot lighter and it compacts a hell of a lot better. I keep my Sil Poly top in snake skins and unravel it in the cord that's going to the tree. Now I have used this in quite strong winds and a downpour, and it's been absolutely fine. Another downside with this though is it seems to attract a little more condensation than polyester, but not so that it's dripping on you or anything. It'll just take a couple of minutes in the morning to air it out. I'd say polyester is a lot more durable for the winter, but this Sil-Nylon is definitely a favourite for me. Okay, put the SRL back on this 11-foot hammock, which is the line that connects one end of the hammock to the other, because I will be using an underquilt. If I need to use a pod or anything like that, that would need to come off. So to recap, polyester, heavier, cheaper, no sag, and the opposite applies for Sil-Nylon. It's a lot lighter, it can sag, and it's a lot more expensive. You're paying for its lightweight properties with Sil-Nylon. Also polyester a bit stronger in heavier winds, heavier rain, great for winter, no shrinkage on it. The price you pay is not so much through the wallet, but the price you pay is the weight in your pack with polyester. So if you're new to hammocking, they are the things you need to take into consideration, not just the price but other factors. You've got to make sure all your hammock suspension is completely covered by at least 6 inches. So I'd suggest getting the top at least 12 inches bigger than the size of hammock you have. My 2.80 m hammock kind of struggled just about getting underneath the 3 metre tarp. It was very, very close. I think on a wind and rain coming in from the side, I'd have been completely soaked. A good all-rounder for all 4 sizes of different hammocks there. The 3.5 meters by 3.5 meters did absolutely brilliant. It covered a multitude of different size hammocks from 11 foot right down to 8 foot. Other than my Sil-Nylon tarp, my poly tarps are always square and not rectangle. 2 reasons being, a square tarp I can make a pretty good ground shelter as well by pegging it out on the corners and using a stick to prop it up with. Makes a kind of a teepee shaped shelter. Of course I could run it between tree to tree and have an A-frame and lie on the ground also, but mostly I go for the teepee shape when I'm making tarp configurations, and I prefer that. And a polyester tarp is great for making configurations for ground dwellers. Hammockers tend to want to keep everything a lot lighter, hence the polyester, and if you can afford it, the Dyneema. But that is it really in essence. I hope you've taken something away from that. It was a good lesson for me to learn, was the 3.5 by 3.5 metre just covers a multitude of different hammocks within the range of 8 to 11 foot. So I wish I knew that before I bought the 3 metres by 3 metres. Now the multicam tarp by DD, the biggest one, I haven't actually had it out for the night. I was going to use it all winter, last winter, but it got really mild. We didn't have a cold, deep winter like we did the year before that. So I got that in preparation for a cold, deep winter, and it didn't happen. And I got away quite nicely with the Sil-Nylon. I am off home now, pack up and do some modifications of my own. So come winter, hopefully I'll be able to test out the multicam tarp. So until then, take care of yourself. I'll see you out there.